not black and white, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Then, you know, just a couple of days later, something happened in Darfur. It's and the same person, I found her putting a stall at the university and campaigning for Darfur. So is Darfur black and white? Yeah, it's clear. Why is this clear and the Palestinian-Israeli conflict not clear? So there is this kind of image in the heads of people, in a way, that is complicated. So because of this, I want today to retell the story from a different perspective. And I will start with a little, before I start with the background, I'll start to tell you just what is the perspective, the lenses that I'm going to use. The lenses are the lenses of human rights. Human rights are universal. They are for all human beings. Everybody is entitled to the same rights. So here, we're going to look at the cause in the way that me and you and everybody else in the world is equal, and everybody else has the same rights. Everybody, and the instruments that we are using, international human rights law and international humanitarian law, are also universal. We have the International Bill of Human Rights, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. I don't know that many of you are not lawyers here, but this is not meant to be for lawyers anyway. And then we have international humanitarian law, which is the law that we normally use during times of war, not targeting civilians. Targeting civilians is actually a war crime. Collective punishments are also a war crime. So these kinds of laws and rules and principles that, in general, we can say that humanity has agreed, in a way or another, that these principles bound us. These principles represent us in general. Human rights, international humanitarian law are principles that we can actually all affiliate with, regardless of our ethnic or religious or cultural backgrounds. So these are the lenses that I want to use today in order to talk about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And this presentation is going to be broad in a way, and I will tell you more about it. But I want to start with the background of the conflict. So how did this conflict start? Is it actually an ancient conflict? Is it actually thousands of years? Or is it a more recent conflict? And what I want to say is that the conflict is actually very recent. Not very recent, the roots started fairly 100 years ago. Basically, the Jews were discriminated against in Europe and in many other places in the world. Then Jewish thinkers started thinking, how can we solve this issue? We're discriminated against. They were being killed in different places. They were being massacred. Of course, the famous example that everybody knows in the 40s was the Nazi massacre of the Jews, but there were certainly earlier in Russia and in Europe and in many other places, different kinds of discrimination against Jews. So many Jewish intellectuals were thinking, how can we do? And then there were two streams of thought. One stream was, let's be integrated in the countries, try to integrate ourselves more, and in this way we will not be discriminated against anymore. The other opinion was, no, let us create a Jewish country. If we create a Jewish country, then nobody can discriminate against us because it's our country. And in that case, if any Jews are discriminated against or scared, etc., they can go and immigrate to this country and we can protect them. Apparently, evidently, the second stream managed to implement its plan, and they were thinking, where should we do it? Should we go and settle in Uganda? Should we go and settle in Argentina? Eventually, the choice was in Palestine. And obviously, Palestine is a very holy place for Jews, and this was an important factor for selecting Palestine. So, after making this choice, they started trying politically to get some entitlement in Palestine. Since the time of the Ottoman Empire, we're talking at the end of the 19th century. They started talking to it was part of the Ottoman Empire at the time, so the Zionists, they created this movement called Zionism, and then the Zionist movement started to try to talk to the Sultan in Istanbul of allocating Palestine to them, and them giving him lots of money to the Ottoman Khilafah, to the Ottoman Empire, as it's known in English. The Ottoman Empire refused. He said, this is part of our country. Then the Ottoman Empire entered the First World War, and the United Kingdom, the very place we are in right now, was one of the victors of this war, and together with France, they divided different places, and they allocated Palestine to be under British mandate. So the British army came, occupied Palestine, and decided to have a mandate. The main goal of the mandate in Palestine, unlike all the other mandates were to prepare the countries to move to statehood, right? So there were no countries before in these areas. Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and many other places were all part of the Ottoman Empire, right? And the main goal of the mandates were to make these vast areas, to make them states, actually. While the goal was to make Syria and Lebanon and Jordan independent states, the goal in Palestine was different. The goal was to invite immigration in order to create a critical mass, a majority that will be able to create a state after the end of the mandate. So between 1918 and 1948, which is the date in which the mandate ended, the Jewish population in Palestine was only 30% of the population. So the mandate actually, in spite of all the policies that the British mandate used in order to increase the Jewish immigration to Palestine, they did not manage to make a Jewish majority in Palestine. So then we were left with, when the mandate decided that it has to leave Palestine, Palestine had 70% non-Jews and 30% Jews. And this is where this is another point, another important point when the problem started. So this is just the general background, and then I should tell you about, so when this happened, when the mandates decided to leave Israel, well, there was the UN General Assembly resolution, which was of course pushed for by the British mandate at that time and other important powers, to divide Palestine into two states, one Arab state and one Jewish state. The Arab state being on 45% of the land, or 44 actually, the Jewish state being on 54% of the land, right? So this would be, the yellow is the Arab state, this one would be the would-be Jewish state, and Jerusalem, which includes Bethlehem, it's an area of holy places for many religions, was supposed to become administered by the UN. This was a UN General Assembly resolution. It was not binding, it was a suggestion, and it was voted in favor of, but this never came into being. Before the British mandate ended, actually, so from 1947, the Zionist movement in Palestine had built an army, basically, or several guerrillas that eventually formed the Israeli army in the aftermath of, after the war, after the mandate left. And before the mandate ended, this army started committing massacres, right? These militias started committing massacres. A famous one is Deir Yassin, which was done in April, right? In April 1948. The mandate ended in May 15th, 1948. So, well, the goal of these massacres was to drive the population out of the areas that were going to become a Jewish state. And why was that? Because, well, even in this in this area that was allocated, it was actually allocated on demographic basis. But the Jewish, the state that was supposed to become a Jewish state had only a 55% majority of Jews versus 45% minority of Arabs.